And if you could just introduce yourself.
I play keyboards in Alice.
My name is Anna Maria, and I am the founder and vocalist in the band Bajra.
What was the initial start?
So we all have pretty storied histories.
I was just bored during COVID. Did a little demo, put it out, and it was pretty well received by the community. And
always had a thing for horror punk and stuff.
Something that started with me and a laptop during quarantine, and just like, oh yeah, all those times I said, if only I didn't have to work my job all the time, and now like I could have time to do that. Well, now this is that.
All right. Welcome back. And if you could please introduce yourself once again to the fine folks at home.
Hey, everybody. I am Rev.Chad Wells. I'm in the band The Creepy Crawlers, and I'm also one of the fiends behind the scenes at Horrorshock Records.
All right. Well, welcome back to the show. Recently, we had your band on, The Creepy Crawlers, and we talked a little bit about them and some upcoming events that they had going on and some releases. Having you on specifically representing the label, are there any events that the label is going to be doing coming up that you wanted to let everyone know about?
Absolutely. As part of the Horror Hound weekend that the Creepy Crawlers are playing at, Horrorshock will have a booth there shared with the Creepy Crawlers, and we're going to have lots of merch. Our comps, we've done Shockwaves Volume 1, the We Bite Earth AD tribute. We'll have copies of those there. Hopefully some of the bands that are a drivable distance are also going to be out there. I've heard that Tom from Rise from Your Grave might come and hang with us. Horror Hound weekend. We'll be there all weekend in Cincinnati. Get to meet the band and the label and see what we've got going in the future. We are planning some summer shows. Several of the bands on the label will have new things coming out by summer. So we really want to put together some almost miniature horror punk fests, like big bills with lots of bands from the area. We're going to try and focus on sort of Western Pennsylvania to Ohio, maybe over to Chicago, Indianapolis for sure. Probably around June or July, because Rise from Your Graves Cryptid Creature feature album will be coming out at that time, and we're all going to try and support those guys and move some units for them. So yeah, we've got another Shockwaves in the pipeline, Shockwaves Volume 2. We're still filling that up, looking for the right bands. We want stuff that's not been previously released on this. And so there's a waiting game with bands as they can get things recorded and stuff. So we don't have a solid date on that, but that's looking like late August or September. We'll have that out. And then we have more plans for, like we did the Earth AD tribute. There are more plans for more tributes to different sort of historic horror related albums and bands. I'm trying to think what all we have. I mean, all of the bands are getting busy right now. Boogeyman is playing in Arizona with Miss Smiths, which is a Smiths and Misfits tribute. And they're also playing the same date that we're playing Horror Hound. Our buddies in Boogeyman will be playing with Evelyn's Casket in Tempe, Arizona. So lots of stuff going on. We've got a pretty good roster right now, and we're talking to a lot of other bands about what we can do for them, and just trying to kind of let things grow organically, don't force it. And we're trying to do things in a way that allows the bands and the label to take the least financial risk and scale up. There's so much with record deals where we're going to do 300 or 500 pieces of vinyl, and if you don't sell them, then you owe us money. And there's so many bands that I've seen put out 1,000 CDs and then they break up the next day. So we're trying to do things that are in more limited runs or in runs that we can do kind of on demand for certain things to test those things before they become a larger order.
Mm.
So that's kind of something interesting that we're doing that other labels aren't really doing as much. And we owe a lot to our buddy Dan from We Are Horror Records. The Creepy Crawlers got to put out our first release through We Are Horror. We got to work with Dan, and we got to see a label situation where it was really run by a fan who loved the music. And Horrorshock, absolutely. I had some friends that were willing to help me with that. And it was absolutely inspired by what Dan had done. And then he decided to take a break. And so we thought we would help fill the void that We Are Horror was going to leave, but he's already back. So now instead of filling the void, we're sharing the void, I guess, a little bit. So
For sure, for sure. Well, hey, I gotta say, it's really cool that you would shout, Dan out. I love the ability for people, across the scene to work together like that. And like you were saying, mentioning that you guys used to be on that label is really cool. As far as the other bands you mentioned, the Boogeyman and Rise from Your Grave, I love those bands. I've had them on my show. You guys at home will see those episodes later. You're gonna love it. And they are some really great guys. I have loved talking with Tom. I've loved talking with all the guys from the Boogeymen. It's been a lot of fun. I'm really excited for to see where you guys go with these limited run releases and things like that. And I think that's kind of cool way for bands to kind of get their foot in the door and see where they're at and everything before they kind of make a more aggressive move that way. So thank you for what you're doing. I think that's really cool. It'll be exciting to see that new Shockwave record come out when it does that you mentioned.
yeah.
And yeah, so moving a little bit along though, the bands on the label. So for people that if you've never seen the show before and you don't know anything about if you don't know anything about Horror Shock or anything like that, who are the bands on your label so that the audience at home can find them and show them the love they deserve?
We have my band, the Creepy Crawlers, are on the label. Boogeyman is on the label. They do something a little bit different. They have a sound that is not drastically different than like Graves era Misfits, but with something a little bit more operatic thrown in there in the way that it's put together, and there's a storytelling. Everything that they do is based on sort of literature that they also created. So I love those guys. They're really cool. Rise from Your Grave, awesome band from Pennsylvania. Los Morts from Peru. They build themselves as slasher punk. They're extremely tight and a great sounding band, and they use keyboards in a way that you don't often hear in horror punk. Usually if you hear keyboards, they're going in a gothy direction, and it's but Los Morts is still a full punk rock attack, but with these amazing keyboards and stuff that gives them a different sound beyond the fact that they're not singing in English. So Los Morts, Boogeyman, Rise from Your Grave, Rip Snorter. Rip Snorter is a name that goes back to the 80s. I was happy to see that those guys were still doing stuff when I sort of rejoined the horror punk community, because that was a band name that I would often see next to my band, the Jackalopes, on different compilations and stuff back in the day. A lot of what we're doing now in horror punk is echoing what we were doing with it's not really the first wave, but I call it the first wave of organized horror punk, which is where sort of Blitzkid comes from, post Graves Misfits bands. We were back then using Ep.3.com to put out compilations. I used to run a label, and I put out a compilation series called Hell Night Horrorama, and I think I had Cancer Slug on their first compilation, Blitzkid on one of the earliest comps they were on, and all of those bands from back in that time. We were all doing stuff like that, putting out comps, putting out 7 inches, split 7 inches with each other, or even just selling each other stuff. Blitzkid took a lot of Jackalopes records over to Germany with them when they toured over there the first time, and we got fans, and we weren't even on that tour. So we're kind of trying to do a modern variation of what we used to do back then with Horrorshock, and that was just to find bands that we really love and sign them. There are several bands in the horror scene right now that I've reached out to and I've offered deals to, and they're staying independent and they're not signing with anybody right now, and I respect that hugely. But I like that a label affords us something to where a customer or a fan will find one of our bands and then want to know what other bands sound like this, or what other bands are relative to this. And so just like, in the 80s and 90s with Sub Pop, if you were into rock and roll or whatever, in the post Nirvana world, you would buy something with Sub Pop on it, or Alternative Tentacles, just on the label name alone. So we're hoping to sort of build, we don't do contracts. Nobody is signed. They're signed to us, but they're not signed. They haven't signed their life away. If another label comes along and gives somebody a great deal, they can go and take it. It really is more of a collective of independent groups that are doing similar kind of things, and we like the stamp of approval that the label name gives and the collectability that the label gives. We have a couple of great fans that have already bought every single thing the labels put out, which is, fantastic. And we want to do different things too, like focus on things that other labels aren't doing. Like we did a Creepy Crawlers DVD already. We'd like to do more stuff like that, like alternate formats, do a VHS release only or something like that. So, but yeah, I got tangential and went off on a side note on what we're about rather than the bands. It's
Hey,
Low
that's
S'mores,
okay.
Rise from Your Grave, Rip Snorter, Creepy Crawlers, Boogeyman, and then there's a handful that I'm talking to that we can't really say anything about yet. But
Totally
there
respect that.
there will always. But I, now knowing that I can come to you to tell you these things, you'll be one of the first people to be finding out when something happens.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
All right. And if you could just let us know really quickly, where is the best place for people to come and find news and information about your label and the bands on it?
I would say that Instagram is probably the place where we're at the most, where we post the most updates and we're the most consistent with our communication. So at Horrorshock Records on Instagram. If you're an old person like me and you want to follow us on Facebook, you can, but it's just redundant stuff that's already on the Instagram. We've got a Big Cartel, we've got a Bandcamp, all the comps are on Spotify and iTunes and all of those places. So yeah, just Google us and find us wherever and however you'd like.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. I do really appreciate it. And it's been a pleasure talking with you. I genuinely hope that you, the label, and your guys' band, the Creepy Crawlers, you guys should go check them out. Like you were saying, they're on the label and they're on all sorts of other places. I really wish you guys all the best, and it's been a lot of fun talking to you. Thank you for being on the show.
Thank you, William. Thank you so much. We appreciate you.
All right. Thank you so much for staying to the end of the episode. I really appreciate it. My name is William Hamilton, and I've been the host of this episode of Heartfelt Horror here on the Heartfelt Horror Media Network channel. We really do appreciate it. And I mean, me, myself, and currently another individual who's behind the scenes, really do appreciate you guys staying to the end of these videos. While you're here, if you wouldn't mind leaving a like on the video, subscribing to our channel, leaving a comment down below, these little things really do go a long way to helping us, get our name out there and get our show out into the algorithm so other people like you can find us. So if you wouldn't mind doing that, we'd really appreciate it. Also, if you're looking for other ways to support the show, we have a Patreon. The link for that is going to be down here. You can copy that into the search bar and you'll find our page. Our Patreon is for $5 a month. For $5 a month, you're going to be able to help us buy all sorts of new equipment. You're going to help us be able to save up for um, different kind of developmental processes that we're going to be using to bring you new and different kinds of content besides these interviews. So if that sounds like something that interests you, please consider it. Again, it'll be $5, and the link to the Patreon is going to be down there below. So thank you so much for your time and have a nice day. Bye.